The obvious business case for automated function point is outsourcing. So every outsourcing contract has some sort of metric of quality. Quite often that metric of quality has something to do with measuring the process used to develop software rather than the actual resulting software, the artifact. As someone who came from the manufacturing space many years ago, I always find this amazing. Boeing, for example, certainly has processes for integrating its own working processes with the processes of its subcontractors, its suppliers. In fact, in Boeing's case, they call it working together. But when the parts come into the factory to be integrated into the aircraft, they are tested. They're tested for tensile strength, they're measured for size, they're crushed, they're expanded, they're tested before they go into the aircraft. And yet, the same organization, Boeing, will contract out software development, and when the software arrives, simply integrate it in and hope it works. This makes no sense. That's clear that we need to have ways to improve the quality of software development processes. For example, what CMMI does. But that's not enough. You've got to measure the result. Otherwise, how do you know whether the process is actually delivering quality? So what does it mean for CIOs? Number one, they can actually now offshore, outsource, and have a consistent set of metrics for determining quality that they can use for every contract, rather than having to have a different contract with some different support costs for every outsource and offshore contract. And by the way, it's a good thing for the outsourcers and the offshore companies too, because they don't want to have to support hundreds of different software quality metrics. Great to have a standard metric that they can depend on. But even more important is that it's automated. Non-automated metrics don't get used because they have to be done by human beings, and that costs money. The whole point of the CISC process and the OMG standards process for adopting CISC standards is to adopt only automated processes. Automated processes for counting the size and complexity of code, automated processes for discovering defects in code. Tremendously valuable for the IT organization. Even an IT organization that's insourcing, they still need to know that the quality of the software that they're developing for their own use is high. And process quality isn't enough of an indicator. You need to have artifact quality as well. The world does vary. So I've just come, just before this interview, from Asia. And Asia was slower to adopt the software development process metrics like CMMI, like ISO quality standards like ISO 9000 and ISO 14000. But they're all fully adopted in countries like Japan, Singapore, India, and China today. Since the adoption of those standards, process quality standards, was much more recent than the adoption of those standards in the West, I think we're going to see slower adoption there too. And I had a knockdown, drag-out battle with the top technical staff at a very large software development firm in China that told me that AFP just couldn't work. There was no way that you could automate function point count. This despite the fact that I showed them the standard, they could see it. And they said, well, you can't look for defects in code automatically, only human beings can do that. Well, I'm sure it's true that human beings do a better job than automated systems. There is no way that the 3 to 4 trillion lines of code that are currently running real systems in the world today are ever going to be all checked by human beings. So we have to do what we can do automatically. So yes, there are regional differences. We're seeing more interest in automated function point count and automated defect recognition now in the West. But there is tremendous interest in Asia, and unsurprisingly, a tremendous interest as well in the traditional large outsourcing and offshoring countries. Most of South America, India, and China, for example, they have very high costs related to different quality metrics with every contract that they're involved in. They'd like to bring down those costs by having consistent contracts based on consistent software quality metrics. It's in their interest, therefore, to have standards. And it gives them a way, potentially, to differentiate between each other. Today, having a high CMMI number doesn't necessarily differentiate you as an offshore or outsourcing company. So having another way to differentiate is certainly valuable to them as well.